Hey everybody, it's Chris Jesty, and this time I don't have a match casting for you, although I might tack one in on the end of this video later on if I have time. Likely not. But we're going to be going over the SoCal Open 2024 coming up in October 19th and 20th this year. Right now we're going to go over the classic event. The Alpha Strike event is a Wolfnet 350. There's plenty of information on that out there. But the classic event is going to be closer to MRC standard for us. And for those of you out there who don't know the rules for MRC standard, I've got Pirate and Sam joining me today to go over them. Say hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, so it's going to be, the classic event is going to be Saturday, October 19th. We're going to start bright and early at 9 a.m. because Battletech takes a long time to get through matches. We're going to be closing out right around 6 p.m. That way you guys can get dinner and stuff or go see downtown San Diego if you're visiting from out of town. We're going to be using the MRC core rules. We're going to be mainly based out of the Battle Mech Manual, Total Warfare, and the Tech Manual for all the tech that we're going to be dealing with because we will be playing in the Ill Clan era. This is the typical rules, crippled units. This is right out of the book. Nothing special here. The only addition is vehicles that lose all of their armor in one location or that cannot move will be considered crippled. So if they take too many motive hits and they just can't move, or they get, crew killed or whatever, they're done. Actually, crew killed is destroyed, isn't it?
It's one of those weird situations where the vehicle still technically exists and campaigns may call it one thing or another, but generally we call that like destroyed, removed off the board.
There we go. That's what I thought. So these are standard MRC additional rules that we usually always play with. Backwards level change, floating criticals, careful stand, one armed prone fire, enhanced flamers, machine gun rapid fire, not allowed for battle armor, mind you. TAC ops taking damage, so it's +1 PSR for every 20 points of damage you take. So if you have a big ol' assault mech that just took 60 damage, he's going to get a +3 on that piloting check. And my favorite, engine explosions for big kabooms. Any thoughts on those, or that's all pretty normal, right, guys?
I'm a big fan of the engine explosion, so I'm glad you're including that.
I was about to say, engine explosions are one of those, when it feels bad, oh man, it feels bad, but I don't remember as many games without an engine explosion causing some kind of chaos as I do the ones that do, so it makes it fun and memorable.
Of course, I had an engine explosion happen to my gargoyle at NashCon, and it made for great fun.
And if nothing else, then, there's no kill like overkill, but don't be one hex away trying to kick the damn thing when it happens.
Yeah, it turns every mech into a possible hand grenade. In addition to the standard ones we generally use here at the MRC, we'll be going over, we'll be adding in front-loaded initiative in person. So initiative can be streaky on Mega Mech and in real life too. So we're going to try and mitigate that a bit to get a level playing field here as best as possible. Vehicles that are immobile will be considered crippled. There it is. I actually put it in the rules packet. Look at me, thinking ahead. And then TAC Ops ECCM and TAC Ops Angel ECCM will be in effect. This is to trace buster those C3 networks and boosted C3 networks and stuff. And TAC Ops Beagle Probes. This actually reduces the penalty to fire into woods by -1. So if they're in light woods, you ignore it if you've got a probe, and if they're in heavy woods, you only get a +1. Something to keep in mind, and I'm sure everybody's going to remember it for the entire day.
That's one of those few things. That's one of those where it's like, well, I brought the damn probe, I'm going to use it. So the people that actually remembered that they brought a probe, they'll be using that.
Oh, I hope so. And jumping into heavy woods generates a PSR. So this is to keep those little pesky spiders from jumping for a +6 TMM every turn. So just throwing that out there to help mitigate the chase the spider problem that can occur.
That's the true war crime.
Yep, and there's the no opponent protocol. Games will end once one player has no units left or at the end of turn number 15. So just because you maxed out on score does not mean the match is over. It's still going to go and your opponent still has a chance to catch up. As long as they have units left. Any thoughts?
I like that part.
Yeah, me too. That way it's not a race and you get out dashered or something like that to the game. So you're not just permanently behind. All right, now for what everybody really cares about, the list building restrictions. We'll be playing Ill Clan era this time around, and likely forever because I like the Ill Clan era. 3D printed minis will be allowed. Mercenary faction will not be allowed just because it has basically everything on the list except for some niche units. So it's kind of a cop-out. I want people to commit to an actual faction. Thank you very much.
Just to clarify, there are subsets of mercenaries, such as the Wolf's Dragoons. Can somebody bring a Wolf's Dragoons list as long as it doesn't reference the mercenary general?
Yes, they can. Actually, Wolf's Dragoons and Calhounds, I believe, are their own MUL list, so those are fair game. It's just the actual mercenary list itself is what's the problem child there. And from what I recall, Wolf's Dragoons and the Calhounds both have a fairly limited roster, so if you want to take them, by all means. And the battle value will be 10k. 3 to 6 units, battle mechs, battle armor, and vehicles with the maximum of 1 VTOL unit. That includes VTOL battle armor, mind you, out there. And a max of 2 for any 1 unit in a force. You can have 2 Warhammers, you can bring 2 Hammerheads, you can bring 2 Elementals, Elemental stands, whatever. They can be the same or different variants, up to you. And pilot and gunnery must be within 1, and there is a skill floor of 4-5, which means you cannot bring a 5-4 or a 5-5 or anything worse. 4-5 is the bare minimum we're accepting here. We require competence. Any thoughts on the list building there? Anything out of the ordinary for you guys, or is this all standard operating procedure?
So I think the 2 of the same variant is fun every once in a while, so that, if you really want, you can bring 2 of the same Uziel. However, just make sure you mark your bases or do something so that it's easy to tell which one is which. Otherwise, that can be bad feels on the table sometimes when you mark the wrong damage on the wrong one, so just pay extra attention if you do that. But in general, standard list building, getting rid of the cop-out mercenaries, even if you have a force painted as mercenaries, it probably fits inside one of the great houses. If nothing else, Capellans did nothing wrong, take them.
Yeah, exactly. If you have a Fed Sons Merc list, it's likely going to fit on the Fed Sons MUL, more than likely. If it doesn't, then my bad, you got to switch some stuff around just to squeeze it in. And banned equipment as usual, no artillery, bombs, mines, or anything that targets a hex, including mortars and all that other good stuff, instead of an actual unit. Maximum jump amount across all units is limited to a maximum of 12, not including battle armor. Battle armor don't count toward this cap, but in case you decide to bring a Kanga or a Widge that jumps, it does count toward this cap. So any combination, you can have a jump 3 and a jump 9, or a jump 8 and a jump 4, or a jump 7 and a jump 5, or 2 jump 6s, however you want to do it. That's the maximum allowed jump amount. And no list may have more than 30 damage of pulse lasers across all units, including infantry. So that means those Coronas or whatever they are with those medium pulse lasers are not allowed, because they do more than 30 damage worth of pulse laser damage on a high roll.
What about, that covers the clans and all that. What about the kind of crappy pulse lasers?
Pulse lasers, period. That way we don't get inner sphere medium pulse laser spam as well, which is a thing.
Oh, I was thinking the variable speed and re-engineered and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, no, I I call those out. So ER pulse lasers and re-engineered lasers don't count towards the pulse limit, as a little note right here. And use the highest possible damage value for determining the pulse limit. So medium VSPs do 9. They count as 9 at short range, and that's how much they take up of your pulse limit. Sorry. That's all standard.
I appreciate you taking the time to call out those specifics right there in the packet.
Yeah, and I do use the Corona right here as an example. Also allowed optional ammo. So if you end up bringing a standard autocannon in the Ilclan era, you can use caseless, cluster, flechette, precision ammo only for AC2s and AC5s, and armor-piercing ammo. The reason we usually shy away from precision AC10 and AC20 is because it can be very oppressive if you just spam a bunch of AC20s with precision ammo and or AC10s, and we like to have a fun time when we play Battletech, so those will not be allowed. It's the same reason that the pulse limit is there, just to keep the field as fun and competitive as possible. Missile munitions, Artemis 4 and 5 are allowed. Fragmentation, if you really want to blow up woods, is allowed. Inferno is allowed. Narc and Follow the Leader, heat-seeking, acid, and semi-guided missiles are allowed. If you desire to use any BV-altering munitions, you are going to have to pay for it. That includes semi-guided missiles, so just make sure you keep that in mind if you're bringing tag and semi-guided. And I will be double-checking those BV amounts. And last but not least, Narc Pods, Explosive, ECM, Haywire, Homing, and Nemesis. So, any thoughts on allowed optional ammo?
So as you get into Ilclan, a lot of units start going really, really, really fast. So if we're limiting pulse, that makes sense. It's a reasonable amount. For limiting precision autocannons, well, a lot of stuff is LBX anyway. I think of these, semi-guided is going to be the one that might shine the most. But it's kind of niche. Like, you have to have no line of sight half the time to get all the benefits, and you have to have a tagger and a spotter. So if you do bring semi-guided, make sure you know how to play it so that the game continues to go fast.
Yes, please don't bring equipment you don't know how to use and then figure it out the day of. I expect you all to know how to run your list and be able to explain it correctly to your opponent.
And
I will be there, but I am not infallible.
And I'll be honest, that is 80% of the time why I bring a Stinger instead of a Scorpion tank or battle armor in person. That just makes easier time to keep playing and keep the game moving.
Yeah, that way you don't have to pull out the vehicle rules just for one unit. It does get shot at. All right, now for tournament scoring and placement. The tournament will be scored first on win-loss, then tiebreakers will be decided by cumulative tournament score. So it's 150 rounds or points possible per round, 50 for combat. So it's basically going to be the percentage of your battle value destroyed. 100% battle value destroyed will earn you the full 50 points if you table your opponent. Half battle value destroyed will earn 25 points. And we will only be counting crippled units, which count as half of their total battle value, and destroyed units, which count as their full battle value. I am not going to be counting armor pips and weapons that have been destroyed and figuring out every little bit of battle value. That's not going to happen. I just don't have the time for it. So if you don't cripple or destroy that unit, you don't get those points. So keep that in mind. Maybe getting rid of their initiative sync is worth the battle value. And the total is going to be 75 for objectives, and they will be scaled accordingly, and you get an additional 25 points if you win the match. And individual match tiebreakers will first be determined by BV percentage destroyed, so crippled or destroyed units only count for this, then excess objective scored. So if you both table each other on the last round and somebody scores 75 objectives on the dot and the other player scores 80 objectives, the player who scored 80 objective points is going to take the win. That is going to be the tiebreaker after that. And if you're still tied with both combat and objective score, then you both earned the tie. Congratulations, you both get 10 points. Where there's no sudden death shootout or anything. Sorry, this is Nagi. And every unit that is not painted to a 3-color minimum will incur a -5 point total per match. This is just to encourage you to, paint your minis. I'm not a great painter myself, as I say here. As long as you make an effort to get 3 colors on there, I mean, it could look like my 2-year-old did it when he was coloring. I don't care. Just as long as you get some paint on the minis. It shows effort and shows some respect to the rest of the players out there who took the time to paint their minis.
Just a clarification on 3-color. Does anything that you put on the base count towards that, or does it specifically on the mech itself there has to be 3 different colors?
Now, I don't care. As long as there's 3 colors on the model somewhere, including the base, I don't mind. So you could paint the base up really nice, and if you leave the actual mini gray plastic, I mean, you can, but I'm going to raise an eyebrow at you.
I'm just thinking like a sort of light, pure like red mech. Where would I add 2 additional colors? But if I could put the nice hazard paint on the base, that'd be a nice way to do it.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I mean, there's Sword of Light and Comstar where it's like, well, it's just white. I mean, you could do the whole mech in white and then cockpit glass and then whatever else for the 3rd color, or just leave it at 2 and say it's Comstar, or leave it at 2 and say it's Sword of Light. I'm like, okay, that's fair. They only have, they're all red or they're all white. They don't get multiple colors. You're good. I'm not going to stress over this as long as there's some paint on them. I mean, you could dip them in varnish for all I care. I can call it good.
So for anybody who's still like, oh no, look up Slap Chop, look up Zenithal highlighting, and just use speed paint. That's like spray it black, spray it white from above, and 1 speed paint color, and I think that suffices. But check out the Discords for more. There's tons of easy ways to just meet that 3-color minimum, or if nothing else, really pretty bases. But at events like this, it's really nice, especially for the organizer, to then go and bug the other organizers to, make sure we can come back next year to take some really nice photos, and it looks better when it's not gray plastic.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about curb appeal. So roster submissions, just send them straight to me at chrisprabanic@gmail.com. That is my private personal email. So feel free to just send them to me whenever. Registered name, I have a little example here, and that's pretty much it.
People with curb appeal go curb stomping.
Oh, hey, I like that. Yeah, you got to look good and get dressed, before you go out and go to war.
What day does the list need to be submitted by?
That is a good question, and I will be accepting submissions up until October 18th. So you have until the night before, and I will be double checking these the morning of if you decide to submit them at the 12th hour. Should probably put in there.
All right, well, what kind of, I've got the list building requirements, but, other than a well-rounded force, any tips or suggestions on what I should bring? Should I worry about, you've got probes in here, so I'm a little suspicious that probes would be helpful somehow.
Speaking of missions, so the packet says they will be revealed at the start of the event to test your adaptability in the heat of battle. Mission objectives may change partway through a match depending on environmental effects, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I tell you, you won't find out till the day of. Today, I'm telling you, you're going to get a sneak peek at what they could be. I'm not telling you what they are, but we're going to take a look at, we only have 3 rounds of game, so we're going to take a look at 6 missions and 6 planetary conditions and or environmental effects. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first one is a favorite over here at the MRC, at least one of my favorites, and it's going to be Death Race Relay. This is going to be, all of these are going to be east-west deployment. I just have to specify here. We're going to be using 32 or the standard 32 by 17, either 2 map sheets or neoprenes. So nothing out of the ordinary. This is all going to be standard maps that we all know and love. And the maps will be randomly assigned based on wherever the tables are. So I'm not picking on anybody or making somebody play on the same map over and over again. Spread out. And the objective area consists of hex number 1609, which is the center hex, if I'm not mistaken. A unit that begins its turn inside the objective area may gather data by rolling 2d6 at the beginning of the turn. A roll of 7 or greater means the unit has collected data and is considered holding the data. A unit holding data may return to their starting board edge to score 15 points. An active probe of any kind gives +2 to the roll to gather data, requiring a 5 or higher on the roll. So there's your active probe bonus right there, because they don't really do much outside of that option. So this is all the standard housekeeping. A unit cannot collect data if it's currently holding data, so you can't double score with the same unit. Once you can do it after you return data. A unit that is crippled cannot roll to collect data, nor can it score data it was previously holding. Battle armor and infantry must be dismounted to roll for data or score data. VTOLs must be landed to count for scoring or rolling for data. Unconscious pilots cannot score data or roll for data. Stunned vehicles cannot score data or roll for data. Units that are immobile cannot roll for data, and if you're immobile, you probably can't score unless you're immobile all the way at the edge of the map, which then you can. Scoring data occurs at the beginning of the turn. So, any questions on this? This is a mission that I'm sure you two are familiar with, but maybe some outsiders might not understand how this works.
So, if I do like this mission a lot, but usually, again, I play mostly mechs. If I were to take a dasher and I go zipping in there and dump battle armor next to it, can they both roll for data that turn?
Yeah, it happens, I do believe, the unit has to begin the turn in the objective area. So if you dump the battle armor off turn 1, turn 2, they get the roll.
Okay, then I can load them up and zip both units back to the deployment zone to score for 2, assuming they both get it.
Don't you have to be standing still in order to load up infantry?
Oh yeah, that's
so
good...
you can. By all means, sit still with your dasher.
Huh. Alright, well there goes that tactic. But yes, okay. This is a really fun mission. It's back and forth. It's almost like finding Easter eggs. And I do like it because it's not just another variant of kill. We do a lot of kill missions, so this is a really fun one that isn't just kill. Yeah,
we are not... I will tell you right now, one of the missions is not going to be stand-up fight. That does not happen here in my events. No, thank you. Next up is Domination. It's basically 3 little King of the Hills. So it's east-west deployment. Objective areas are going to be 3 height 2 buildings and all surrounding hexes. So 7 total hexes per objective area. The buildings are allowed to be destroyed by any means and have a construction factor of 150. If you destroy an objective building, it is gone and can no longer be contested for objective scoring purposes. Units may not enter buildings, but you may stand on top of a building as you see fit. Note, this may cause the building to collapse if the construction factor is low enough, which means it's lower than the weight of the mech or tank or whatever it is you get up there. And units within 1 hex of the building, of the objective buildings, including units within the building hex, which means on top of the building, are considered contesting that particular objective zone. The player with the most units contesting the objective zone at the end of the turn is considered to control that objective zone. If both players have an equal number of units within the objective zone at the end of the turn, it is considered contested and nobody gets points. Players score 5 objective points per objective area they control. Battle armor and infantry must be dismounted to count for holding the objective area. VTOLs must be landed to count for holding the objective area. Unconscious pilots cannot contest the objective area. Crippled units cannot contest the objective area. Stunned vehicles cannot contest the objective area. And units that are immobile cannot contest the objective area. Whew, gonna have to find a way to shorten that up. So this is Domination. I will be placing these buildings, so don't worry about where they are. They're more than likely gonna be placed somewhere along the center of the map to keep things interesting. Questions?
I like this mission. It's like King of the Hill, but with a nice twist, and I've enjoyed when I've played it in some of the Mega Mech events.
I will say my favorite tactic on this, if I bring something cheap like a Charger, is, oh yeah, you're going to contest that with your cheap battle armor? Well, I'm going to go thrash on it.
Oh yeah, you just walk into that hex and go prone. You're like, what? What is he doing? I was like, oh god.
Spiders! Ah!
Yeah, so running your charger on top of objective building and then shooting the building to get it down below the charger's weight is a strategy to get rid of that building. Just throwing that out there. So that's it for domination. Unless anybody has any closing thoughts.
Another, I'm not going to say standard because I wish we played it more, but another common one in events. So it makes sense, and people coming from other war games would probably recognize this pretty quickly.
Yeah, that and people playing video games know what domination is. It's
Unreal Tournament flashbacks.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Right. Next up is conflicting commands. This is going to be a take on Crush the Head. This is east-west deployment. Each player will assign a number between 1 and 6 to their units because we have a 6-unit maximum until they run out of units or numbers. So you should only have 6 units, so don't worry about that part. That's in there for proto-mechs, which are not allowed at this event currently. Each player will roll 1d6 at the start of the movement phase until it lands on a number assigned to one of their opponent's units. That unit is now the objective this turn. Reroll if it lands on the same objective target as last turn, unless there is only 1 unit left. So we've had this match tested, or this mission tested before, and someone was like, yeah, I rolled and it landed on their 100-ton assault mech that I couldn't reach all the way across the end of the map 3 turns in a row. So this is to mitigate that bad feels right there. A player earns 15 objective points for crippling an objective enemy this turn, and an additional 15 points for destroying an objective enemy. So if an objective is destroyed without ever being crippled, you score the full 30 points. Like if you just put a Gauss rifle round through the head of the enemy mech, you get the full 30 for crippling and destroying them. And if an objective begins the turn crippled, you can only get points for destroying the objective. So you don't get the free 15 points if the unit happens to land on a crippled unit. Or if the objective lands on a crippled unit, you can only get the points for finishing him off and killing him. So this one could get interesting. I don't know how high of a scoring match this will be, just because it's going to be fairly random and chaotic, and you're going to have to shift your attention to the objective every turn, because it's definitely not going to land on the same unit 2 turns in a row.
I'm really interested by this. I think it's a definite interesting twist on Crush the Head.
Yeah, same here. I think it's going to force some interesting decisions. Like, crap, my objective this turn is his 100-ton assault mech in the rear, but there's a stupid medium mech that's almost dead or almost crippled right next to me. Do I take the bad shots on the mech in the rear, or do I just kind of put this little medium mech out of his misery because he's poking me in the side and I don't like it? Up next is Convoy. This is a newer mission that I'm stealing from, I think I've seen a couple of versions of this. There was something similar to this ran at Alveo last year, and I think Josh has something similar to this in his Mech Bay packet as well. This is going to be, of course, east-west deployment. The objective consists of 6 trucks placed along the center line of the map. Okay, there went Sam. Okay, the objective consists of 6 trucks placed along the center line of the map by both players, 3 each, beginning with the player who lost initiative for the first turn. Each truck must be at least 2 hexes away from another truck. There should be room for all of them, no matter how bad you place them. Trucks are indestructible, but may be blocked by enemy units normally. You may enter a hex with the truck as per normal vehicle/stacking rules. Trucks may be captured by having more units within 1 hex of a truck than your opponent at the end of the turn. Yes, you may recapture a truck that your opponent has previously captured by having more units within 1 hex of the truck at the end of the turn. If there are multiple trucks within 1 hex of a unit, you must choose one and only one truck to contest. So you can't have 1 unit contesting 3 trucks at the same time. If the order of choosing units is important, decide in initiative order at the end of the turn. Units must not be crippled, unconscious, stunned, immobile, or shut down to capture a truck. VTOLs must be landed and battle armor must be dismounted to contest or capture a truck. Once captured, beginning on the following turn, trucks may be moved at the beginning of the movement phase before both players have moved any non-truck units. Consider this a second truck-only movement phase to not give initiative advantage to any single player due to trucks. Score 25 objective points, 75 maximum, of course, per truck you have withdrawal from your starting edge. At the end of the game, score 10 objective points for every truck that is still on the board and under your control. So, any thoughts on this one, Pirate?
Can I shoot the trucks if my enemy has it?
No, they are indestructible. I think I put that up there.
I probably did.
Yes, I did. So, you can shoot at them, but they're not going to take any damage, if that makes you feel any better.
That's fair. I mean, I'm not going to be trying to slow them down or anything.
They only move 2 hexes a turn. They do ignore terrain, but they don't ignore units. So if you put a unit right next to them, they have to go around you to get their 2 hex movement, or they move into your hex and stop.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those where I'd have to sit and think for maybe like 3 or 4 minutes. What's my strategy going to be before I then go, you know what? I'm just going to go in, get the trucks, get out, and if I blow up an enemy mech like that's near a truck, is there a way for me to recapture it?
Yeah, you just go touch the truck, and now it's yours.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so yeah, you definitely can recapture a truck that your opponent's already started moving toward their end of the map. So it's not, oh crap, he's got it. Now I can't do anything about it. Now I just have to retreat. You can definitely go and chase that truck down and try to deny them objective points and get you some more objective points if you can maintain control of it till the end of the round, or end of the game.
This almost sounds like a good use case for displacement rules. So charges, pushes, DFAs to get somebody off the truck so then you're touching it.
Yeah, not a bad idea. But that one's pretty straightforward. A lot of back and forth going on, I'm assuming is going to happen there. We'll see how that plays out. And the next mission is one of my personal favorites. This is what I lovingly refer to as bunker busting. Of course, east-west deployment. The objective building is 6 hexes of height 2, regardless of whatever model I use, because I do have some 3D printed buildings. Each hex has a construction factor of 75, and each hex of your opponent's building hex is destroyed will earn you 10 objective points. If you destroy the entire building, you earn an additional 15 objective points. Remember, we have our 75 maximum total, as usual. If you destroy, each of your building hexes still standing at the end of the game will earn you 5 objective points. Objective buildings may not be entered, but they may be stood on. So if you do get a 75-ton mech across the board, you can start having it stand on objective hexes and taking them down every turn. A building hex will collapse if a unit weighs more than the building's current construction factor. Don't forget. So this one is pretty straightforward. I'm basically going to be centering these buildings on your edge of your side of the map, and they're going to be in a triangle formation. So 3, 2, 1, simple little pyramid structure. Any thoughts on bunker busting, Pirate?
I did like that in the virtual pod tournament, so I'm excited to see how you do it in person, because I don't know if you're going to be using dice or how to keep up with everything.
I've got sticky notes, copious amounts of sticky notes, and erasable pens.
You're coming out of this event sticky. Got it.
No, actually, I'm probably just gonna but I'm probably gonna have a printout that I hand out for this mission as well, so you can just write in the number in each hex, and as each hex takes damage, you just erase it and then put the new number in. So. Yeah, that is a good call to make sure we have something there so that it's easy to keep track of every building hex.
If I destroy 4 of the hexes, does it completely disintegrate the whole building?
That's correct. That is how building rules work. So if you destroy 4 of the 6 building hexes, because it's all, even if the models themselves aren't connected or one piece, they're all considered one building, and if you destroy more than 50% of the building hexes in a building, the whole building collapses. So once you destroy that 4th hex, you automatically pick up those last 2 hexes.
You can tell we've been cheesing this before.
Yes. Bunker busting is I think we've tested it out twice now, and this is I think we've got a good system here for this.
Oh yeah, especially since if they're 75 health, then you could literally Highlander burial your way to victory.
Yeah, and I expect people to try that, and I hope it's fun and chaotic. And we're going to get into the last mission. This is Capture the Flag. I mean, shouldn't have to really explain what Capture the Flag is, but we should all be familiar with it, like Domination and King of the Hill, in some way, shape, or form, but we're going to get into it anyway. Of course, east-west deployment. Each player places 3 objective markers at hexes. You're on the west or left side of the map, 0204, 0209, 0214, and the west hex right side of the map is 3004, 3009, and 3014. Basically, these are equally spread out in your starting zone along the second hex. Usually we do 3 hex starting zones. For this, I'm more than likely going to have you guys start on the board edge. So these are going to be 1 hex off the board edge in your starting area. So a player may pick up an opponent's objective by ending the turn adjacent to the hex and firing no weapons. You can still melee. Picking up a flag scores 5 points, 75 maximum possible objective points. You may not pick up your own objectives. Sorry. VTOLs may not capture objectives for this mission, and battle armor must be dismounted to capture or move objectives. VTOLs are a little too cheesy on this. Some of them are very fast and can get almost all the way across the map on turn 1. Some of them can get across the map on turn 1, so we're just putting the kibosh on that and saying no. Player bringing an opponent's objective to their starting edge scores 20 points. If a unit carrying an objective is crippled, unconscious, stunned, immobile, shut down, or destroyed, the objective is dropped in that unit's hex. It may be picked up by another allied unit. So if you destroy the enemy who's carrying your flag, you cannot run up to your own flag and pick it up and bring it back. It stays there in that hex. And you either defend that hex to prevent them from picking it back up, or, stand on that, or, body block them, get in front of them so they can't get to that hex.
And there's 3 flags here, it looks like.
Yes, there are. There's 3 different flags. They're basically one in the north, center, and south of your starting area, or just 1 hex off the board edge. So you're going to have to get all the way across the map in order to touch these objectives. And then go all the way back across to score that extra 20 points.
Do I need hands? If a VTOL can't capture it. Okay, good.
That way, tanks can capture them and all that. So if you do have a quick little hovercraft, you can capture it with a Savannah Master or whatever you really want.
Ooh, this sounds like something for a harasser with good piloting.
Yes, it does. Okay, so those are all 6 of the missions. And each mission is going to have some sort of complication. I'm going to roll randomly, and we're going to have 3 random missions. And we're going to get into the planetary conditions here. There's also going to be 6 planetary conditions, and I will be rolling randomly and applying these to the missions as they come. So this is all going to be random. I won't know until closer. I'm going to roll randomly after this. So I don't know what combination we're going to get. We're just going to go over all of them, so you have to prepare for all of them. First up is what I like to call high tide. Beginning on turn 1, the tide begins to rise. A line of level 1 water hexes engulfs every hex between it and the nearest edge. So this is kind of hard to visualize, but it's basically going to be a triangle / pyramid / trapezoid shaped wedge that comes up and moves closer to the center of the map every turn. So you will have like a triangle section on your half of the map, and then once it gets all the way to turn 7, there's going to be like a little 1 to 2 hex wide land bridge in the middle of the map. Everything else is going to be level 1 water. If the hex is already higher than level 1 water, it remains its original height. Or if there's level 1 hexes, there are little islands out there. So anything that's height 0 is going to be considered level 1 water. And beginning on turn 8, the tide recedes in reverse order, so it opens up the map again. How do you feel about this one, Pirate? I actually do have a picture somewhere visualizing how this looks with dice, so I may or may not show that later.
sounds very Hunger Gamesy. So back to harassers and VTOLs probably be fine. Jumping mechs can like escape, but it's kind of like where was it, that old movie Battle Royale? Like the lines are closing in, getting people forced into the middle. So you definitely want a brawler. And if you do have a sniper, you probably want it to have some sort of maneuverability so it doesn't get, oceanified.
So more than likely, I've got a ton of small D6s. More than likely, I'm going to plant like 14 or however many I need for each of these little hexes at each table. And just as you go, you place those little D6 in each of these hexes as they come up, and you can see the map start to shrink visually.
Mm-hmm. Now,
the map doesn't shrink. It's still fair game. You can still, anything that can hover over water, like VTOLs and hovercraft, can ignore the water.
That's what I was going to ask is...
Yeah, just remember you got to pay to go up a level if you're using a hovercraft.
I think I'm good.
Okay. All right. No more questions or concerns on high tide?
I'd have to see it moving.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting because this is the first time I'm going to see this on the table. I've theory crafted this, but we'll see how it works in practice. So you could get something like this on domination, and one of the domination points could be underwater. So things can get real interesting as the map unfolds. Next up is Extreme Cold. This is one I know you're familiar with because I stole it from last year's NashCon. Before deployment, the TO will place lava/burning hexes throughout the map. Some maps may have existing lava hexes, like the fire and ice map that I have. Any unit within 2 hexes of a lava hex or burning hex ignores the environmental effect of Extreme Cold. And we're going to get into what that is. Beginning on turn 1, mechs cannot turn off heat sinks voluntarily. Beginning on turn 3, every heat sink on a mech sinks an additional heat. You don't have a choice. Single heat sinks are now double, and doubles are now triple. Mechs now track negative heat. See the negative heat scale below. Reduce the movement of each squad of battle armor by 1 due to the extreme cold, and reduce the gunnery and anti-mech skills of battle armor by 2 due to frozen actuators. This is also beginning on turn 3. And every vehicle rolls on the motive crit table at the beginning of the turn for a temporary motive hit effect that lasts only for this turn. This stacks with any existing motive hits. And here's the negative heat scale for reference. Actuator frozen is the same as shut down due to too much heat.
So this would be the opposite of that harasser I was thinking about taking earlier.
Now, vehicles are still viable. There's a good chance that you may or may not have any sort of, motive crit on your vehicle. If they're member VTOLs and Widges and hovercraft do have a bonus to roll on that chart, so there's a good chance if you do bring a harasser or Savannah Master, he may just be stuck in the cold and not moving around too much. This is where your mechs are really going to shine, especially your toasty mechs that'll generate way too much heat.
Mm-hmm.
So any concerns or words of wisdom to the people at home?
Shut off heat sinks is 1, but 2...
you cannot do that voluntarily. Beginning of the turn.
Okay, what can I set woods on fire so that I have something to stand next to?
Yeah, I'll allow it. It counts as a burning hex or lava hex. So yeah, if you set a woods on fire, I will say that counts.
Sweet.
So if you bring Inferno ammo and there's forests on the map you're playing on, you can try and avoid this. I will be placing hexes on the maps myself. I will be spreading them out. That way it's fairly even and no one gets the Bozak because their half of the map doesn't have enough lava. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this as fair as possible.
Gotcha.
And next up is Extreme Winds. Any unit using jumping movement must make a PSR at +2 difficulty. Failure causes the unit to drift 1 hex determined by a d6 roll as though the unit had fallen. If there is an enemy unit or a friendly mech in this hex, treat it as an accidental DFA, triggering the domino effect if necessary. VTOLs suffer a +3 PSR to all piloting checks, in addition to suffering 2 damage on a failed piloting check. Roll location normal. So imagine the winds are, you're in a little canyon and the winds are above hex 1. That way it doesn't interfere with fire. Because stuff that interferes with firing usually sucks. So this is just to mess with your movement a little bit. And it's any unit using jump movement. This includes battle armor, for the record. How are you feeling about extreme winds here, Pirate?
Missiles? They'll take, will missiles be affected? Because I know in regular modes, the missiles are like +1 or something.
No, this is why I said pretend you're in like a little bowl, and anytime you jump, you hit the winds that are above the bowl. This way,
okay.
Yeah, this way you don't, it doesn't affect gun combat or weapon combat. It's only for movement purposes. That way, it's to keep the game interesting without slowing it down. We still want you to hit your target as often as you would normally, and we don't want to penalize anybody for leaning too heavily into any one weapon type.
There's not a lot of good ways to punish jumpers, like if someone wants to take a giant jumpy list outside of restrictions. I do like this for, if you do take jumpers, you have to consider things a little more.
Yeah, and if you're jumping onto an objective, you got a PSR to make, buddy. You may not land on that objective. Or you may land on something you didn't want to if you fail that PSR. So, piloting skills are nice. Next up, unless you have any other comments on here?
Nah, we're good there.
Alrighty, next up is Top Gun training. I stole this one from this year's NashCon. Beginning on turn 3, at the beginning of each turn, each player secretly chooses between a light air cover BSP and a light strike BSP. Both players reveal their choices simultaneously. If you want to play rock, paper, scissors at the beginning of every turn, by all means do that. And have like just rock and scissors or whatever, make it simple. And then beginning on turn 8 and beginning each turn, at the beginning of each turn, each player instead chooses between a heavy strike BSP and a heavy air cover BSP. And you still have to roll for that light air cover to counter. It's not a high roll, like a 4 or a 5, but you still need to make that roll. How do you feel about this one, Pirate? You actually played through this, didn't you?
Yes. So that was fun because it was nice to use BSPs because I didn't have any, and the objective was a little different. But getting those light strikes means there's no TMM on that dasher. So if somebody does bring some cheeky little small units, you can start picking them off. Now you still have to roll, but in my game, everybody, my opponent and I, we were just like offense. I heard some people did, cover. I don't want to deal with this, so cover. But I imagine how many aggressive players you have that'll be like, yeah, you know what? I got a chance at deflecting his or hers, or I can just do raw damage. I'm going to do raw damage every time.
Yeah, so there's decisions to be made. If you want to protect your dasher, maybe you choose light air cover. If you want to kill their dasher, you take the strike, At least there's some fun behind there, hopefully. Or at least more explosions. That's always fun, too. All right, next up is what I call tremors. At the beginning of the movement phase, put a tremor marker in every hex containing a unit. So I'm going to hand out little D6s, and you just put one of these, or if you have something else to use, by all means, go for it. During the heat phase, any unit occupying a hex with a tremor marker takes 5 damage, rolled on the leg table if it's a mech. In addition, any unit occupying tremor marked hexes suffers a PSR at +2 difficulty, and any adjacent hexes suffer a PSR at +1 difficulty. Obviously, VTOLs and Widges ignore this mechanic because they're high enough up above the ground. Due to the violent nature of the quakes and unstable ground, however, hovercraft do not ignore this mechanic. If you're a ground unit, you got to watch out for this.
Like random rocks and fissures opening up and smacking the skirts.
Exactly. The graboids from the movie Tremors coming up and trying to wrap around your blade. Stuff like that.
So a tremor marker, that's like the actual worm from the movie.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was visualizing when I came up with this.
I love it.
That was one of my favorite movies of all time, so I named the mechanic after it.
Well, and also, so one thing people forget is that BattleTech is not just Grasslands 1 in space or sometimes urban combat. Like, there's a lot of stuff in the universe and a lot of native flora and fauna. Like, you know, there's some planets where you're hunting dinosaurs. There's others where, like, there's sentient goo. So this is a nice little reminder that, you know, there's a lot of fun to be had out there in the big universe.
Definitely. So if you're playing on an ice map, they're ice worms. If you're playing on a lava map, they're lava worms. If you're playing on a desert, they're dune worms.
I'm having flashbacks to Guild Wars now.
But yeah, this is, I hope, is going to be interesting. Just keep in mind that these can show up with any of those mission objectives. So if you're playing domination, and that means every turn you need to kind of do a ring around the rosy to not get hit by one of these tremors. So it could get interesting depending on what mission it's paired up. Or Death Race Relay, like if you go to the middle and you roll for data, and you can kind of area deny your opponent from getting in range to roll for data without suffering that PSR or taking that 5 damage, depending on where you place your units. So just things to keep in mind. And last, but definitely not least, we have Running Riot. This one I stole from NashCon last year as well, because it was really fun. At the beginning of the game, place a riot hex in the middle of the map, which I think is like 1609. Starting on turn 2 and every turn after, both players choose an existing riot hex and roll 1d6 for direction and 1d6 for distance. If it goes off the map edge, place it on the last hex closest to the map edge. Any unit moving into or through, including jumping over, a riot hex takes 2 damage. This is per riot hex moved through. If the unit is a mech, roll on the leg table. Any unit ending a turn in a riot hex may attempt to sway the rioters to their cause by rolling 2d6. On a roll of 7+, the rioters are now under your control, and you may move them 1 hex per turn, and they no longer damage your units that move through them. Beginning on turn 8, the riot is getting more violent, and you are permitted to use lethal force to quell the riot. You may remove a riot hex by dealing 5 damage to the hex. Anti-infantry weapons such as flamers and machine guns deal additional damage to the riot hexes as though they were infantry. Beginning on turn 8 as well, each player chooses 2 hexes to place new riot hexes off of per turn instead of 1 hex. And beginning on turn 8, riot hexes now deal 4 damage to units moving through or into them instead of 2. I don't know if you remember this one from NashCon the year before, but this one was really fun.
I wasn't there for the Alpha Strike day, but I remember everybody having fun with it. And this looks like another fun one. My only concern would be, A, I want to play all of these, and B, not everybody gets to turn 8. Luckily, everybody kind of had their stuff together and we were rolling fast, so my NashCon games this year, I was able to get to like turn 8 2 of the 3 games, but it'd be a hard time trying to pick which one of these I'd want to play against the most, because I'm sure they're all going to be fun.
Yeah, and I will be rolling randomly to make pairs of these. So you could end up with Capture the Flag and Running Riot, or conflicting commands and below 0 negative heat scale. So I mean, it could get real interesting. Like I think the most interesting would probably be either Death Race Relay or Domination with Tremors, because you kind of want to be on the objective, but you're kind of forced to move at the same time in order to avoid taking free damage. So yeah, some of these I can see getting really fun and being chaotic.
Looks like a hoot.
All right. So any closing thoughts, Pirate? Any combinations you would like to see, or anything? I mean, unfortunately, you can't make it out this year, as far as I know. But anything at all you want to say about these?
So well-balanced list is always a good thing. I personally prefer well-unbalanced lists, so I think having some tanky stuff, some speedy stuff will be great. Range of bands, because you want to make sure you can get your snipers and your brawlers in range, etc. Those all do well. I definitely would want a probe for the mission that could come up that needs it. And Woods Hex is cheap, -1 to shoot at woods, even though not every time you shoot is going to be at woods, but it is a nice thing to have. So a probe or two here, some fast units. I still think a hovercraft to be worth it if you can stomach hovercraft rules. And it gives you maneuverability without the jumping. But if I was going to say which of these I'd like to see, the one I don't want to see is Data Death Relay and the shrinking water map, because I'm not going to get to my edge if I do that. That's why I'm bringing hovercraft.
Yeah, that one could get really interesting. Or like Domination, where 2 of the objectives are more than likely or could be underwater, because one of them is going to be center of the map for sure.
Oh, I'd be fine with that. Actually, I'm okay with some underwater movement or water maps in general. But yeah, though, knocking people over for race checks, I think it'd be fun. I don't know. I'd have to start mapping things out to see which ones I'd want to see, but it'd be interesting to roll them. I do hope Tremors comes up at some point. That just sounds fun.
It does, and I may or may not cheat a little on my rolling if it doesn't show up. We'll see.
It gets a +9 to be selected on a D6.
Yeah, we'll go with something like that. Well, unless you've got anything else, I think that's it for this review of the SoCal Open. Pirate?
You always run a good event in Mega Mech, and I've seen you run them in person too. So I hope you get some good stories out of it this year. And once I can start budgeting for next year, maybe I'll be able to fly out. But definitely interested to hear the stories that come out of this and the pictures. Lots of pictures, please.
Yes, I will be walking around with my phone out the entire time, either taking pictures or video, and hopefully interviewing players and stuff. I'm going to try and do a lot of media work here while I'm TOing. We'll see if I can manage it. If not, then you're just going to get pictures.
That's all right.
But yeah, thanks for joining me, Pirate. Sam as well. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to call it a day. And good luck, everyone. And I'll see you at the SoCal Open, hopefully.
Adios.